We've got brains, skills, skipping rope.
It's a lasso.
Whatever.
Hi, I'm Jacob Suggs, and welcome back to the latest episode of Quick Thoughts, where I give you my incredibly fast thoughts on a movie, TV show, whatever. It's just easier for me to edit, and I can get my thoughts out to you on whatever just a lot faster than usual. And basically what this means is that I'm just going to give my quick overall thoughts. I might do an analysis of this particular film later if it, calls for it. But because I'm a student and have a lot to do, this is just going to be an easier way for me to do quick movie reviews for you guys, and I can just get my thoughts out a lot faster. So let's talk about Kingsman: The Golden Circle. So this movie is the sequel to Matthew Vaughn's previous film in this new franchise, Kingsman: The Secret Service. And as for that movie, I thought it was really awesome. It was a sleeper hit, nobody really expected anything out of it, and it just blew us all completely out of the water. It was a great parody and kind of homage to spy films and Bond films, and in all of that and doing all of these homages, it kind of created something of its own with all of its characters, and it was just a really fun time at the movies. Now, I can't say it's a great movie, but it's a really, really good movie that I personally really enjoyed for a ton of different reasons. But we're talking about the sequel. And I was incredibly hyped out of my mind for this movie. I literally was rushing to the theater to get to the last possible showing because I was so excited to see it. And I sat down with my friend, and the movie started, and it was awesome. I'm not joking, the opening action scene in this movie is really awesome and really well done. You see it a little bit in the trailer, and even there it's edited just perfectly. And that's something Matthew Vaughn's good at. Really quick, fun action scenes that sometimes incorporate really classic tunes and jams and songs that people enjoy. And whenever you put all of these elements together, it makes for something special. And that is something that this movie definitely excels in. All of the action scenes in this movie are pretty spectacular, and oh my gosh. It's just overall a really great scene, and it has a lot of cool stuff in it, and it's just a joy to watch on screen. And this movie basically takes all of the action scenes, like the church scene from the first movie. If you've seen the first movie, you know exactly the scene that I'm talking about. It takes scenes like that from the first movie and amplifies them times 10 in this movie, and inserts a lot of the stuff that made the first film great in this movie as well. The guy who plays Eggsy is really good in this movie. I like his character a lot, though I had some issues with what they did with his character in this movie. But aside from that, all of the performances in this movie are pretty spot on. And Mark Strong as Merlin and Colin Firth as Harry, who returns. That is not a spoiler because it was in the trailer. That being said, I felt like those two actors gave the best performances in this movie, really brought their all, and it definitely shows because their performances are the best. However, although there are really good performances in this movie and really great action scenes, there's not a lot of narrative, there's a lot of pacing problems, and at the end of the day, it just lacks context. This is the epitome of how not to do a sequel. You amplified the stuff that people enjoyed from the first one, but it took away the narrative, pacing, and context that the first one had behind it, just for the sake of adding in more action scenes. And whenever they do put in the narrative, unfortunately, it becomes a little bit boring because I don't care what's going on, because it's just not as interesting as the first movie was. And the subplots in this movie, there's just so many subplots, and the main one is Eggsy is dating the princess that he had, we'll say, butt intercourse with in the previous film. Him and the princess are dating, and at first I was like, okay, that's kind of funny, but then they keep going on and on and on and on, and I just didn't care anymore. It's just not interesting, and whenever you have more subplots than the actual plot, you have a massive problem. The villain in this movie is one of the worst villains I've seen in a long time. She's like the head of this drug cartel, and she's out in the middle of the jungle, but like her fortress looks like a 50s town. And other than the fact that she says, yeah, I grew up on cool 50s stuff, there's no other context or reason as to why it looks like the 50s. I get it's supposed to be a parody of kooky Bond stuff that happened in the old 60s movies, but this was just pushing it a little too far, and it felt like it didn't have enough context to really justify the fact that it was looking like that. I didn't like her whatsoever, and she is definitely not on par with Samuel L. Jackson in the first movie by any means. And what they do to the character of Harry in this movie is just really bad. They try to pull off certain tropes, and certain tropes can be pulled off, and they do pull off some of them, but overall, looking at it as a whole, it just was really disappointing to me. Like, he wants to study butterflies because he has amnesia and stuff, and it just doesn't add up to me. Like, I get kind of the fact that he has amnesia because, you know, he was shot in the head in the first movie, but then again, it does feel like a trope, and I can't overlook that, and it's just really disappointing to me because I expect so much more out of the writers because they wrote such good characters the first time around. And that's something that this movie does horribly. It doesn't utilize its characters in the way that it should. There are so many characters and actors that have a lot of talent and could bring a lot to this franchise that you're trying to build up, but unfortunately, you either A, kill them off, or B, barely use them in the movie. I mean, I like the Statesman in this movie. I thought that was a cool addition to this movie, seeing the American side of what the Kingsmen are, but at the same time, if you're going to see Channing Tatum in this movie, he's barely in the movie. And Channing Tatum's a really good actor that's completely wasted in the runtime of this film. It's so frustrating, and it hurts me so much because it's just a massive waste of potential, and at the same time, they do something with another character from the first movie that I absolutely hated as well. And this movie is just surrounded by subplots, and it just overshadows the film. The film is still fun, but I don't know if I can say that it's good. At the end of the day, I'd probably give it like a 6. If I'm being generous, anything less would be like a 5. This was a massive disappointment and a massive letdown for me. I'm getting angry just talking about it. And although it does have cool elements in it and has some really cool action scenes and some really fun new characters whenever they're on screen and are used, in the long run, this movie just doesn't hold up as well as the first movie did. And that's really disappointing because I wanted to love this movie. The Golden Circle was one of my most anticipated movies of this year, and ultimately it just let me down big time. A movie can look pretty and a movie can have really good action scenes, but at the end of the day, you have to balance out visuals and narrative. And the narrative is definitely lacking. And it's a shame, and I feel bad saying that and giving it a really low score in my book, because to me, this movie has a lot of potential. It has a lot of cool stuff in it that I'd love to see more of. It has a lot of cool characters that it introduces that I would love to see more of. And if the script for this movie had like, I don't know, 2 to 3 more rewrites, we might have had something special. But for what we got, I'm extremely disappointed. That doesn't mean that I don't think Matthew Vaughn's talented. I think the guy's incredible, and I love the majority, if not all of his movies other than this one. But this is one case to where I have to say that it's not as good. So have you seen Kingsman: The Golden Circle? Do you agree with me that it's kind of a disappointment? I'd love to read your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I'm Frame by Frame. Remember the name. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.